Hello. Hello, hello. Hopefully I'm live. Do let me know in the chat if I'm live. Hello everybody. I hope everyone's doing well. We've got me, Jordan Sorcery, and Martha here in the room. I'm going to tilt this camera and we'll see if we can actually see Martha. Don't think we can. No, she's just out of shot. Just out of shot. So I'll try picking her up. I just want to prove that Martha is here. So she's here in a little box, being a little potato. She's just getting settled in for the evening. We're going to be talking tonight about a handful of cool indie games. This is going to be, it's a bit of an experiment, this one, because these are games that I've yet to play and I've not had a lot of time to really delve into them. I say I've not had a lot of time. It's been a super busy time. I've had some of these for a little while, but I've not yet delved deeply into them. So what we're going to do is take a quick look at some of these things. We're going to explore some of the obvious stuff. I haven't got a second camera yet. I've still not sorted that out. So I'm not going to go through the full book because that would probably be super boring if it's literally just me reading a book in front of you. I don't think anybody's going to enjoy that. I don't think I would enjoy that. I don't think you guys would get a lot out of it. But we'll do some first impressions. And what I think I'd like to do with this is do those first impressions and then come back in a month or so, having played all 4 of the sort of key things I want to take a look at, or having read them in more detail, and then sharing my then sort of changed perceptions. So essentially we can sort of track from just this first impressions, opening up the box, taking a look at some stuff, and sort of, delving, scratching the surface just a little bit, to a month's time, 6 weeks, whatever it is, having forced myself to play it, found time to play these things, and then coming back and talking about them. So it's not quite a review. It's not going to be that kind of detail. It's going to be super unstructured. It's just going to be sort of broad thoughts. But then we'll see how things change. Have I changed my opinion on them based on what I thought at first and that sort of thing? It does look like I am live. Hello everyone. Nicola, good to see you. Invicterus, Dungeon Slime, hello. Martha's here saying hello. The potato cat herself. She's a sweet potato, I'd say. Before we get into things, I just want to remind folks that this month's GW Books Club, if you follow the GW Books Club, this is where my friend Stu from the Miniature Realms channel and I read an old Games Workshop book every single month, and then we do a live stream. I do a live stream for my patrons, which is now free to join. So if you follow me on Patreon, even if it's not in a paid tier, you can still join. So from this month, it's going to be totally free. You just have to follow me on Patreon. You can come on that live stream, and we will be talking about the book Inquisitor. So this is the Ian Watson 40k novel, the first one that was written, the first 40k book. It is not what I expected. Very, very interesting. But that's going to be in a couple of weeks. You can check out more details on my Patreon and you can see that. Like I say, it's free to join. You just have to follow me on Patreon. And then later on the YouTube channel, Stu and I get together and we record the typical book club. So You can see it live, and we do a sort of live stream chat and back and forth, and we explore those ideas about what we thought of Inquisitor, which I think is going to be a really fun episode. And then Stu and I do our book club together. We're also going to be doing a sort of bonus book club for the start, early-ish next month, I think, where we're going to be talking about Riders and the Dead. So this is the Dan Abnett book. It's an original Warhammer Fantasy book from back in the day. This one is essentially the prelude to the Storm of Chaos. So because I'm going to be doing a lot of Storm of Chaos content in August, assuming I make it and get everything done on time, I'm going to be talking about that book, and we're going to do something on that. Sorry, Dungeon Slime, I've just noticed. Is that it's the volume is high? Is that what you mean there? I think. Let's see. Should I bring down the volume a little bit? It looks like I've still got some music playing. That's not right at all. So I've turned that off. Hopefully that's not coming through anymore. And then hopefully you can hear me and I'm coming through okay. But Dungeon and anybody else, let me know if the sound that's coming through is all wrong, is messed up. Hopefully it sounds okay. And you can clearly hear me, and that you could clearly hear and understand everything I said up until this point, because nobody wants me to have to go back through all of that sort of stuff. Bio, hello, greetings. Oh, great chronicler of ancient tomes and relics. Yeah, I'm assuming you're referring to me, but you could be referring to Martha, I don't know for sure. So yes, those are the book clubs. Great Dungeon, yeah, that's good. The background music was too high, I've taken that out, so hopefully you shouldn't be able to hear that now at all. Those are the books clubs that are coming up. I'm just going to quickly do another plug before we get into this actual discussion of these games, and that is for the GW Films Club. So this is a brand new podcast that I've been working on with my friend Rob, who we have played games together, Warhammer and role-playing games and all that sort of stuff, tabletop games, since we were kids. We started out in these hobbies more or less together and grew up playing all of these different games together. So we absolutely love it. We've got a real deep history and all of this sort of stuff. We are going to be taking quotes from the people who created Warhammer and 40k and other GW games, and we're going to be watching the movies that they cite as great inspirations on those games that they created. So essentially, if Rick Priestley says, you know what, I loved Dune, and Dune informed the creation of this, that, or the other, we're going to take that quote as the starting point. We're going to go away and we're going to watch Dune, and then we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about our reactions to the film, but we're then also going to explore whether we can feel that influence in the 40k universe and in all of the games that came out, and it's hopefully going to prompt some cool discussion and some fun ideas. So that's coming very soon. It's got its own YouTube channel, GW Films Club, so you can go and check that out. So that's there. That's going to be. It's not going to be once a week. It's probably going to be less frequent than that. But we're going to try. We're experimenting it. We're going to give it a go, and we're going to see if it works and all that sort of stuff. Sexy Shred, the cat is right here. She's now fallen asleep in her little box. She knows she's still awake. She's still awake. I'm gonna lift her up again just to once again prove that there is a potato here. So there is Martha. Not best pleased, I don't think, about being raised up while she wants to get some sleep. But yeah, she's going to be here. I think she's probably going to be sleeping through. My intention for future streams, I'd love to get a second camera so that I can actually, better quality, so you can make, if you want to, you can see me more clearly. But I'd love to have a camera so that I can actually be pointing down at games and books and other stuff like that. And then theoretically, even having a camera on Martha, I think, would be really fun. So that is something I'm thinking about. But obviously, still need to set all of that sort of stuff up and get around to it. Leon, Movies Club, interesting idea. We think it's a fun idea. We love talking about films. We love movies just generally. We love Warhammer. We love Games Workshop. So finding an excuse to combine those things. And like I say, it's a jumping off point. So we're not going to delve too deeply into specifics, but we might be saying, okay, this reminds us of that, and I can see where they drew this from and why that inspired this. So it's two friends talking about the hobby. It's the kind of conversation you might have in the pub after a game, but we've kind of got a little bit of focus around a specific film, around specific games, so that kind of thing. And Stoney, Dark Future and Mad Max, 100%, absolutely is on the list. That one's coming up, because, yeah, the Mark Gascoigne, the creator of the background for Dark Future, has cited Mad Max. So has Kim Newman, who wrote some of the best books for Dark Future. So Mad Max is certainly a part of the fabric of that. So yeah, we're definitely going to get into that. And Bio, yes, showcasing the Marienburg Army. Yeah, I did do that rough update last week. So that is going to be, that's the most recent update. But the next one shouldn't be too far out, because I do want to talk about the army list itself and sort of trying to fit what I've got in terms of miniatures into a specific army. Because I'm going to be playing a game of the Old World at CrackCon in October. So Stu and I are going to be allying. He's going to be taking dwarves. I'm going to be taking my Marienburgers. And we're going to be fighting against, I'm not entirely sure who we're fighting against, but it's a duos game. So that's going to be good fun, I think. But I do want to get a feel for what army I'm going to take. See if I can squeeze the Marienburg class landship into that army list, because I would love to. I think it's too good an excuse not to take. So we'll go through that. So there will be some more stuff on the Marienburg Army coming up in the not too distant future. Certainly don't want to leave it as long as I did for the most recent update. Leon, the few Warhammer movies that they've made, I wouldn't be surprised if that turns up at some point down the line. I think part of what we are keen to do is to sort of go back into history and look at the things that informed the creation of 40k and Warhammer more than things that were informed by 40k and Warhammer. Now, there will be some crossover there, and I'm sure we will find excuses. It's a very loose concept anyway, so I'm sure there'll be times when we go, yeah, we want to do this, we want to look at that. But I suspect we're going to lean more into the inspirations than some of the other stuff. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's an experiment, really. So we need to see if we enjoy doing it. We need to see if we can get a regular routine of recording it, and obviously we need to see if people enjoy it, because it's a bit weird, and it's going to be very dependent on whether or not people enjoy listening to me and listening to Rob and listening to the two of us, and Martha's there as well, of course, but talking about whatever random films we've decided to talk about. So, evening, Alf. I hope you're having a good one. We're going to get started, I think. I'm not sure how long this stream will be. Again, this is another one of those experiments where I'm just sort of seeing whether or not it is fun to do a sort of hangout session that's a little bit less structured. I'm not leaning as much on an actual play or a sort of a solo play, though I am intending to do one of those in a couple of weeks, so I'll be sharing some information about that soon. And actually, you might be able to help me. So there's a couple of solo games that I've considered for that next live stream. I could do another one of the White Dwarf solo adventures. So we've done the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay solo adventure that was in White Dwarf 109, 106, I can't remember. There were a couple other D&D and maybe RuneQuest solo adventures in White Dwarf, and I think that they might be good. Sort of, they're small enough. Some of them are split into different parts as well, so they're kind of these discrete chapters that we could do, and we could actually play through the whole thing in one session. So that feels like it could be a nice idea. So those White Dwarf solo adventures. I've also, by a lovely chap called Toby Lancaster, he's created these 2d6 dungeons. So these are procedurally generated dungeons, essentially, that you can go and check out. And he gave me a copy of these at the UK Games Expo, which was really very nice of him. Solo player dungeon crawler. And essentially, if anybody remembers in Warhammer Quest, when you would go to the town between adventures, and you would roll up the events that happen. You would roll up some of the stuff that was happening in the town, what was available, how things went down. That sort of procedural generation is what's used in this, a 2d6 dungeon. And essentially, you're rolling your 2d6, and that's giving you the layout. It's helping you to actually understand what the dungeon looks like, what kind of things are in the dungeon, whether there are traps, all of that sort of stuff. It looks really fun. It looks like there's so much stuff in here, so many tables of monsters, of locations, treasures, all that sort of cool stuff. Apparently, there's a lot of influence from Fighting Fantasy in here, and that seems really fun. So that is an option as well. So we've got the D&D solo adventures from White Dwarf. We've got the 2d6 dungeon that Toby Lancaster has given me. And then there's a couple of other games as well. There's some board games. There's other things like that. One thing that I would love an excuse to play is the Star Trek Adventures solo game. So I have that. It's the Captain... Oh, I forget what it's called. I want to say Captain's Table, but it's not, it's not called that. But essentially, it's a Star Trek episode where you are solo playing through. You're procedurally generating the ship, the crew, the incidents, and then obviously you're building out, much like any solo RPG, you're building out the story, the narrative. And I think that could be quite fun. So we'll come back to it, but give some thought. Let me know in the chat if you would rather see D&D solo adventures from White Dwarf. Would you rather see the 2d6 dungeon from Toby Lancaster, or would you rather see Star Trek Adventures and a solo adventure with that? So there's something to think about there. Pro Delboy, hello to Northern Ireland. Sexy Shred, we'll be back after the football. If you're still going, mate, have a good one. I hope that you enjoy the game. I hope that you're the side that you're supporting wins. Alan, hello. Nick, good to see you. Yeah, I don't know if you've made any other live streams so far, so that's really fun that you've made it. And it seems like you like solo games as well. So let me know, Nick, which you think is the best one to do on my next live stream. So should it be the White Dwarf solo adventures, the D6 dungeons, or Star Trek Adventures? Or any other suggestions that you might have that I've got to hand. So throw it out there and see what we think. But that's not what we're doing tonight. As I mentioned earlier, I've very generously been gifted a couple of games for free, and just because it's been quite busy, there's been a lot going on, I've not had a lot of time to spend looking through these games and actually getting into them. As what I like to do on the channel is essentially use it as a sort of a method of coercing myself, committing myself to actually doing something. So as you've seen with the Marienburg Army, by turning it into a series of videos, I've kind of committed myself to, okay, well, I know I need to make progress. I know I need to work on that, because it's not just for me, it's part of the work. And, you know, right now, that's been a good method to convince me or get me to actually take action and to not ignore that army that I want to build, but I just keep on putting off. So in that same vein, I thought, let's take these games that I've got here that are really cool. We'll look at them now, and then I will promise to play them or to read them in between this and a future stream in a number of weeks. Not my next stream, because that's going to be the solo play, but maybe the stream after that, so in August. And we'll come back, and then I can talk about what I thought of the games, having done that initial view today, and then coming back to them later on. So that's what I was thinking there. So we'll start with Hobgoblin, I think. And then we can sort of take a look at that, and I'll give some first thoughts and then get into it. Oh, Nick, you're suggesting the D6 dungeon, although you've also been looking at Modiphius' Captain Log as well. Yeah, so I've got it, and I've not had an excuse to use it. So part of me likes the idea of that, but only if people fancy watching it. Iron Sword Starforged. A solo campaign journaling RPG. That sounds cool. So that sounds kind of similar to Captain's Log, perhaps, as well. You were thinking it might be fun to match up September Fantasy Fest with a solo September focus and do more solo games in September. That's a really interesting idea, actually. Yeah, I quite like that. That could be really fun. Chalkley, hello. Thank you. I'm glad you like the stuff. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, Nick, that's a fun idea. I do quite like that. So potentially we could find an excuse if we can agree certain games, certain solo games, and maybe bring together a few people over the course of that month in the lead up to and the aftermath of Fighting Fantasy Fest. Then that might be quite good. Very themey. That could be really good. So let's keep that in mind and come back to that one. Yeah. Right. Let's get into Hobgoblin. In the chat, have people seen Hobgoblin? Have you guys seen much of this? Hello, Jez. How you doing? You all right? Hope you're having a good night. So Hobgoblin is Mike Hutchinson. So he is the designer of Gaslands. That is a really good-looking game. I've heard nothing but great things about Gaslands, the spiritual successor to Dark Future and Car Wars and lots of that kind of cool stuff. So that does seem like a really fun game that I definitely want to play at some point. And my friend Rob, again, who I'm doing the GW Films Club with, we have agreed, because I'm terrible at finding the time to do all of the projects I would love to do, he's going to do some damage. He's going to weather a car for me so that we can play. And the car that I've chosen, because I'm an absolute massive nerd, is the Batmobile. So I picked up one of the Batmobiles, my favourite Batmobile model, just in the Hot Wheels size. And then he's going to weather it. Rob is going to weather it for me, and then we're going to play Gaslands using those. He's got his own cars. I'm going to use the Batmobile, but a sort of damaged, futuristic version out in the wastelands. So I'm quite looking forward to that. And in fact, let's see in the chat if anybody's got a favourite Batmobile. I'd be curious what people's favourite Batmobiles are, because there's a lot of very, very good ones, and I'm sure it's just like, there's probably no distance between them for some people, because there's a lot of really great ones, but there must be some favourites as well. Nick, so you've backed Hobgoblin. That's great. You've got the PDF. You're waiting on your copy. You played it at Salute and it's good. That's great. And yes, Mike Hutchinson is Planet Smasher Games. Yeah, absolutely. And Mike's got his own YouTube channel, which is really fun, and he shows so much behind the scenes stuff about his development, his process, what he's working on in his studio. I think it's really fantastic. I've really enjoyed watching some of Mike's stuff. I've had the chance to chat to him a couple of times about some things as well. Literally just, some cool stuff about the industry, about games, just exploring fun stuff that we both love. And it's been brilliant. So, a big fan of Mike's. I think he's really cool. Hobgoblin. This looks so great. It's such a good looking book. I mean, you can see the picture on the screen there. The art for Hobgoblin, I believe, is all by an artist called Crom, who is fantastic. He's got this really, I don't know how you would describe it, but it's this kind of, everything's kind of chunky, but also kind of weathered. It's kind of taken damage. It's these thick lines. There's some really nice fantasy art in here, which I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of that sort of characterful art. I think there's a lot of, and there's a lot more, actually, there's more sort of background's the wrong word. There's more art in here than I expected, actually, in terms of other styles of art. But there's some really nice design. I mean, lovely pieces. Like this, if you can see that. Just about, yeah. Just really cool. It's a very, very particular style of art. And actually, if anybody is familiar with Thought Bubble, the comics festival that takes place in Leeds, and oh, sorry, no, it's moved to Harrogate now. So I used to go to Thought Bubble every year because I'm a big comic book fan. And I went to a lot of the Thought Bubbles, and I have a sketchbook that is a sketchbook of X-Men, but I've asked different artists and commissioned different artists to in the same book draw their favorite X-Man character. They could do anyone they wanted, and they could just do some really, really cool stuff, whatever they fancied doing. And Crom is one of the artists who did an X-Man piece for me, and it's great. It's fantastic. So a really awesome Wolverine picture. So at some point, I will scan that or take a photo of that, and I will share it because it's great. Really, really nice piece. And Crom's art is just great. His latest stuff, Bird King, looks really fantastic. I've not read it, but it looks so nice. And that kind of art, there's almost a sort of, it's not cartoony, but there's a it's not going for realism, and you've got almost wobbly lines, and kind of they're weighty and they're damaged, and there's just a fantastic amount of character in the art in this book, and just Crom's art generally. But one of the things I do like about this book is it's very clean and well laid out. So I think this is really nice. I'm interested in what the story stuff is like. I actually really like this as well, which is where you've got flowcharts that are quite nicely illustrated. This is why I need a second camera, by the way, because this is absurd. But yeah, there's a lot of cool looking page art in here, and it's just like nice and clean and well put together. So that is quite nice. It kind of reminds me of Root almost as well. If you're familiar with Root or Arcs as well, which is the more recent piece game by the same designer, same artist. Nick, you're saying the best Batmobile is the animated series version. Same with Grim Darkness as well. Same Alan. Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic Batmobile. I do love it. In the opening sequence where it sort of elongates, it sort of looks really long. Always loved that design. I think it's absolutely fantastic. For me, on Stoney, you're saying Michael Keaton's, but that's more to do with being the first Batman that you liked. The Burton one is amazing as a Batmobile as well, I think. I think for me, though, and this is probably controversial, and I'm sure we'll see the viewer numbers drop immediately after I say this, but I really like the more recent Batmobile from Batman vs. Superman. So the Ben Affleck Batmobile, which is kind of like low, like a roadster, but then has that chunky, dangerous feel to it. So I think that it's a very, very cool design. It just really appeals to me. And then I also do quite like it where they put a big cannon on it in Justice League, which is absurd. But yeah, it's definitely, I'm looking forward to using it in, I think it will fit very well in a Gaslands game. So I'm excited about that. Justin, Dark Future was amazing. Me and my younger brother used to love playing it. Yeah, I mean, it's great fun, right? It's really good. And I'd really like to find an excuse to play some more of it. It is cool. I do think it's a very nice system. I like the way in which it creates the sense of sort of concurrent action. So because everybody can go multiple times in a turn, and that is determined by how quick you're going, the way in which your speed then gives you more options, but it also restricts you in certain ways. Obviously, when you're going around corners, it becomes more dangerous. You kind of sort of open yourself up to more. So it's almost like a push your luck mechanic, but not quite. It's a really fun way of sort of creating that sense of speed, I think. So it definitely does work. Jake, hello. How are you doing? Thank you. I'm glad you like the videos. Grim, I'm not sure where Crom's name does come from, actually. No. Jez reminds me of Mac Mignola of Hellboy fame. 100%. Yeah, that's a really good shout, actually. Yeah, it's that same kind of like thick, weighty lines that they looks like they've got chinks and damages and sort of cuts and all that sort of stuff. The armor is kind of damaged, or they look like they've lived through stuff. Everything looks like it's lived through stuff, and there's that real feel to it. So it's very nice. And yeah, definitely a Hellboy feel. Nick, you do know Thought Bubble. Friends Jenny, Corey, and Benjamin go regularly. It's a really good con. It's really fun. And the Harrogate venue is really big. There's loads of cool stuff. It's definitely worth it. It's worth going if you can make it, and it's convenient. But yeah, it's very good. And you also have to like comic book art, of course, as well. There's lots of really cool indie artists, so there's lots to see and do. Justin, Crom sounds like the antagonist from Conan the Barbarian. Yeah, and who am I thinking of? So Thuzula Doom is one of the bad guys, right? That's the bad. That's James Earl Jones, I think, but I can't remember who the other bad guy was. Nick, Root, the board game, very good. Yeah, Root's an interesting one for me. So we have that. We've struggled to get 3 players together to play it, and I struggled a bit with the rules when trying to learn the rules as well. It just I think the layout and the sort of formatting was a bit of a challenge for me. Maybe I wasn't in my best mood, perhaps, when I was reading the rules, but because of that asymmetric design and the way that the rules were laid out, I really struggled to sort of follow certain aspects of how it worked. Now, that's not to say that I don't want to play more Root, because I think the theme is great. I think it looks good. I think the way in which the faction actions resemble the actual factions themselves is very nice. So I think that that's really cool. We've also got the Root role-playing game. Again, it's trying to find time to put together a group to actually run it and run it consistently, because obviously you don't want to just run a game and then get an adventure or 2 adventures in and then it falls apart. So I think the hope is at some point in the future that we can get a regular RPG group again. We can play some more of that, and we can play. There is what was it? Brindlewood Bay is the other RPG that we've got. This is my partner and I. So that's on the shelf, ready to go as well, because that looks really fun. Everybody plays old ladies who are investigating crimes in a sort of small seaside fishing town. So you're essentially all Jessica Fletcher's Murder, She Wrote, and you can sort of go down that crime-solving route, but there's also this potential that there's infiltration of sort of Cthulhu-esque cult kind of stuff as well in the background. So it's beautifully designed. It looks wonderful. Very much looking forward to playing that, but it's on the list. It's a long list. At the moment, my regular RPG group is currently playing through a couple of different things, including the Call of Cthulhu Horror on the Orient Express, which is absolutely fantastic, and Saltmarsh for D&D, and sort of switching between those. But even that, sometimes it's a struggle to find the time in the week to make sure that I attend it. So I do feel like I'm missing out a little bit on the RPGs at the moment, which is a shame because I think RPGs are great. But that's by the by. I've gone off on a little side tangent thinking about some of that. Jez, you're saying Adam West's Batmobile that could only actually do about 40 miles per hour. And of course, the real and only one was Adam West's Batmobile, along with the Pink Panther Mobile. Yeah, I mean, I think Adam West's Batmobile is fantastic and it's iconic. Obviously, very, very fun, very of its time. Definitely matches the vibe of the original '60s Batman. It's very good. It does not make it to my favorite, sadly, but not because it's not good, because it is good. Jake, only read a couple of comics in the past. Do plan on reading some more in the future. As a medium, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I remember when I first started reading comics when I was a lot younger, because my older brother read comics and read loads of different Batman, loads of DC stuff. It was that initial struggle to kind of imagine the action, using the different frames to kind of create the motion and to create the feel, working out how to follow the actual page and the dialogue and all that sort of stuff. Once you get into that natural flow of it, they are so good. I think it's an underrated. I mean, I know there's lots of people who love comics, but I think it is an underrated storytelling medium. It's often put to one side and kind of, considered a lesser form of literature or form of art. And I actually think it's an amazing form that definitely deserves more love on a sort of credible level. I don't know if I'm going a bit highfalutin with some of that, but yeah, I love comics. I think they're fantastic. Sometimes I sort of I ebb and flow, wax and wane with comics, where for a year or a couple of years, I'll be buying loads. I'll be reading loads. I've got a massive collection underneath the desk behind me. Is a load of comic books. But then I'll be periods where I'm not that drawn into different artists, not that drawn into different books that are being sort of put together and put out at the time. So that then I don't really buy anything for a period of time. Sometimes I'll go back and I'll reread my classics and I'll spend some time with that. But sometimes it just means I don't read comics for a while. And then eventually something piques my interest and I'm pulled back in and I find a load of other stuff. But I'm a big proponent of comics. I think absolutely fantastic. If I didn't do a YouTube channel about gaming, then a YouTube channel about films or comics would probably have been my next choice. So yeah. And who knows where the future goes. A bit of discussion about Mike Mignola, and I think absolutely he's amazing, and I think he's really, really fun, really cool art style. And I agree. I think Crom has that certain feel of it. Massive Headlopper Comics vibes by Andrew McLean in that art. David, that rings a bell. Massive Headlopper. That comic reads, yeah. Now I'm going to have to go and Google that later because I definitely recognise the name and I'm sure it would come flooding back if I saw it. But initially, no, I can't quite remember. Grim, I was actually wondering where have I seen his work in comics? Has he done much work for 2000 AD? Anyone? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I know Bird King is his most recent work. I think he's on 3 volumes of that now. I'm not sure if he's done anything else. Nick, you've answered the Crom question. Crom was the chief god of the Cimmerians in Conan. Fantastic. Yeah, okay. I wonder if he did take it from that then, or if it's come from something else, but that definitely makes sense. As for playing Root, it's an asymmetrical game, so really needs a few players around the board. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that part of my issue with getting those players to the table for Root is that there are other asymmetric games that I would rather play. I mean, namely Chaos in the Old World, which I think is just absolutely fantastic. One of my favourite board games ever. I actually recently got the chance to interview Eric Lang, who designed Chaos in the Old World. That's going to be out on the channel in the coming weeks. So that was an awesome moment for me because I absolutely adore that game. Truly fantastic. That and Forbidden Stars, which also, that's another thing that doesn't get talked about quite as much as I think it should. The 40k asymmetric area control game. I think it's Orcs, Chaos, Eldar, Space Marines. Everybody has different powers. Everybody's building through their tech tree. And you're flying around the galaxy trying to take over planets. Incredible. Absolutely amazing. You have warp storms that can affect the way in which people can move around the board. It's a modular board, so you can design it in lots of different ways. I hesitate to say infinite replayability, but a huge amount of replayability. Incredible, deep strategic choices, and it's 40k. So that's great. So games like that, Forbidden Stars, Chaos in the Old World, sometimes I think I would rather play those. They're a bit heavier, maybe, than Root. But that sort of tends to be, okay, well, if I've got enough people to play one of these games, I'm probably going to want to play one of those. Rising Sun is another Eric Lang game as well that I think is absolutely incredible. Too many great options, I think. Hamilton, good to see you in here. Hello. Yes, Hobgoblin. You get me back on track. Hobgoblin, stunning game. Really nice. I think so. From what I understand, this is Mike Hutchinson sort of tackling the rank and flank fantasy war game. So, sort of reimagining how can you do Warhammer Fantasy? How can you bring together a sort of fantasy game from base sort of fundamental principles, a brand new setting, a brand new world, brand new rules. From what I can see in the rules, there are familiar things here. I'm trying to find a stat block. Let's see if we can find one. So you still have army lists. Obviously, you've got some nice scenarios, and it seems to be like building them around that. You have the the battlefields, the fortress. You can do team play, which is fun. There's some really nice looking bits of lore and fiction in here that I want to spend some time with. I'm imagining, like, given the Crom art, I'm going to imagine that it's somewhat. I'd imagine I mean, like, you look at the cover, there's got to be a certain sort of punky kind of, almost like the Crow kind of emo vibe to it. So you would expect it to have some darkness in its design, in its story, in its world. Fortune cards. This looks really interesting. So you actually can use these to do one-shot abilities, which I think is quite fun. You can build your own units, so sort of create out your own units. So there's a lot of functionality in here that you can pull together in order to kind of make the game work however you want it to work, which I think is really interesting. So you're not constrained in quite the same way that you might be with a Warhammer Fantasy or some IPs that are a bit more specific, I suppose. Jez, it seems that Mike wanted to create a game where you can put all your cool toys on the table and smash each other's face in, which is a good call. Yeah, absolutely. And Hamilton, was just excited to see it, as I love the openness and adaptability of the rules so much. Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the thing, right? It seems to be really about playing the game how you want to play it, giving you the tools to play with whatever armies you've got. You can bring together your classic Warhammer Fantasies, but you can also make it into anything else that you want to and just sort of explore it. And I think that's really fun. I must admit, I am a big fan of worlds and stories. They're a big draw for me in getting me to invest in a game. Because I'm not really rules first. I think I'm probably world first. So I think it will be really interesting to see what this world looks like and whether or not it sort of draws me in a way that I want to spend more time with it. I see that there was more talk about Crom, Conan's God. Oh, Jez, you've added an extra layer, extra detail there. So the name is taken from the Irish Crom Crouch, the crooked god. He crops up in Slain and the Secrets of the Kells too. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, Slain is really good fun, actually. That's great. Grim, actually, Jez, it could be the fact that I've just read the tie-in, that the name Crom is familiar. That's interesting. Okay. Justin, sorry, just had to Google it. Crom was the god worshipped by the antagonist in Conan the Barbarian. Yeah, that's fun, though. I'm glad that how cool is it that there's a few people in here with the depth of knowledge, though, to both know that and to have extra layers of detail on it. I think that's really fun. Hamilton, Brindlewood is very good. Miss Max... Goodness. Brindlewood is very good. Mrs. Marple to the max. Yeah, it absolutely feels that way, and we even got the cookbook that they did in the Kickstarter, so I think that's great. Jez, Lala Cthulhu. Yeah, I mean, I think a bit of Cthulhu She Wrote is a fun idea. I think whoever came up with it's really really cool idea. Grim, I'm going back through Slain and currently on Demon Killer. Forgot how incredible the Horned God is. Stony, alas, for the Awful Sea RPG might be worth a look for something a little different. That's something I've heard of, but I'm not entirely sure what it is. That, again, is something I probably would have to double check on and Google it. The name is familiar to me, but the game, it doesn't ring any specific bells. I see some folks chatting. Yeah, 2000 AD. I mean, there's obviously lots of 2000 AD's influence and cool stuff flowing through there. Pat Mills, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Justin, an old school friend of mine, illustrates and colorizes various comics, including 2000 AD. Kind of jealous of him, given we both used to be artistic at school. Yeah, that's very cool. And David, yes, definitely go check Headlopper. Was published by Image Comics. A great romp on sword and sorcery. I think you'll like it. Yeah, this again, one of these things that's ringing a bell, so I definitely think I need to go and check it out. Alan, I was going to pick up Nevermind the Billhooks. It seems like a rank and flank game, and there's rules now for fantasy stuff. Okay, I don't think I've heard of that one at all. Is that Is that just an indie, like a published indie game? Is that something that's online? Tell me more, because that sounds interesting. Jez, they're my favourite games. It's why I'll buy anything by Joe McCullough. He hints at a setting, and then you're free to create the world how you want, make it your own. Yeah, so that is one of the cool things about Silver Bayonet. I quite like the way in which it's drawing on that history, but then leaving it totally open to however you want to sort of move forward with that and whatever else you want to bring into it. I think it's really nice. That it's basically, it's great when a game gives you an excuse to do some cool stuff, and to explore things in a way that you might want. So I do quite like that. Nick, I've got Crowthulu, which is an expansion to Be Like a Crow, another solo journaling RPG system which plays fast and uses cards, I'm guessing, and Colossal, another solo RPG journaling system I'm looking at. So Colossal, I actually picked up for a friend as a present. So I've briefly flicked through Colossal, and it's the similar. It's not the same kind of art, but there's a certain similar style or technique, I guess, to how some of that stuff is drawn. And one of the cool things about Colossal, I think, is that the world, literally trying to create this colossal world, to just say because essentially you're in a room, but the room is so enormous that it's kind of inconceivably big. And they're definitely fans of Shadow of the Colossus, the old PlayStation game, because that's very much part of the feel that you get there. And they've recently just either announced or it's coming out now the I forget what it's called, Catacombs or something like that, where you're actually going into sort of the under empire, if you like, the dungeons and the sewers and all of that sort of stuff. And that looks really fantastic. So some of these games, yeah, I mean, do people enjoy on the stream right now? Do you guys enjoy seeing someone do solo plays? So are you wanting to see more of that? Because I think there's some more of that in my future, I suspect. So I definitely want to play more online solo games, because I think it encourages some really interesting narrative play. And actually, I quite like the idea of there's a difference in doing a solo play literally on your own, where you're within your mind. So when I do solo plays on my own, it's all internalized. So I'm thinking through things. I don't say anything out loud because I don't need to. When doing a solo play online and streaming it, verbalizing things, it kind of gives everything a slightly different, there's almost a new perspective on it. There's a new tangibility to it. So I think that there's something really interesting. It's different to doing a sort of traditional solo play on your own. It's good different as well. So I would like to do some more of it. So I think I'm probably going to try and find an excuse to do some of that. And yeah, I think in a fortnight I'll be back. I'll be streaming and doing something. I've just not decided what just yet. Jez, anyone played Death Wizards yet by Vince Ventrella and Tabletop Minions? Miniatures game where you play a necromancer, PvP, co-op or solo. Just sorted my minis, going to play at the weekend. I'd seen that they'd released it. I've not actually seen any more information about it. I've seen the cover, I think. I will be interested to know if it's any good. And Nick, it's why I thought Solo September would be fun, to make everyone share their solo play experiences and tales and systems. I like it. Yeah, I'm supportive of that. I think that's a really good shout. Actually, speaking of solo games, another one that I've been sent, and this was a while back, and I feel really bad because so I was sent this by Mirage Merchant, the lovely chaps there, and this is a game that they've produced called Bloodsport Gambler. So it's a boxed game, and it enables solo or cooperative play, and it's 1 or 2 players, and essentially it's a gambling game where you are you are betting. You are the people who are betting on all of these different these gladiators, essentially. But it's got a really sort of, I don't want to say grimdark. That's probably not the right phrase. But if you're familiar with Escape the Dark Castle or Escape the Dark Sector, that kind of stripped back, but also it's quite simplistic and quite detailed at the same time. Kind of not that far away from the sort of ink drawings you might have seen in some of the fighting fantasies of old. So it's really, really nice art in here. Really good looking game. And there's a lot of sort of simple mechanics that kind of test your luck, that kind of push it. You're betting on those different who's going to win in these different battles. There's a lot of chance elements to it. Like I say, you can play it 2-player, and I think you're playing cooperatively. I don't think you're antagonistic, but I might be wrong on that. But yeah, essentially, you can play this one solo, and I think that this is going to be, if I get another camera, then I think it might be fun to try and sort of set this one up and play this one live, because it's, like I say, a gorgeous looking game. I think it will be really fun, and I think with the sort of high stakes element of it, I think that could be really great. So this is one I want to encourage myself to play and find the time to play it, because I've had it. It's been staring at me for a while. Oh, Alan, have a great night. I will hopefully see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Bloodsport Gambler, I got it a little while ago. I've been trying to find an opportunity to sit down and really just have some fun with it. I haven't been able to. It's just been too busy, really. But I do want to. I do want to spend some time on it, because it looks so good. It just looks great. Yeah, I mean, look at the art. Jez, love that art. Yeah, it's great. It's really good. They did a really fun little trailer that kind of had like a real 70s vibe to it. And I think it's a labour of love. So I do want to find the time for it. And I think it will fit quite nicely on the channel as a live stream, a little mini event, but I just need to set up that camera, because I think it would not be as good if I'm not able to show you what's happening and kind of do it live. So yeah, I think it's definitely one to bring into this, and because it's a solo game, it could fit in quite nicely. What I might do is once we've finished up here, I'll put a poll on the community tab on the channel, and I will just ask for, I'll include Bloodsport Gambler, I'll include 2D6 Dungeon, the White Dwarves, and also the Star Trek Adventures, Captain's Log. All of those options for solo gaming, and then we'll get everybody to vote on it, and then we can see what we're going to play in a fortnight, and come together to play. Nick, the Bad Spot podcast makes use of Ironsworn and Starforged as a content creation for solo play as well. So that's interesting. So do you mean that they actually literally they play it live and then they sort of talk about what's happening, or they're taking a different approach? So when you're sort of speaking in terms of content creation, so is that literally playing it on stream, for example? And then you're just asking, which Captain's Log version do I have? I have got the DS9 version of it, of course. I had to insist. Although, I must admit, and I mentioned this in my Marienburg Diary, I think, I've been watching a lot of Star Trek Voyager again recently. So I don't know if we've got any Star Trek fans here in the discussion, in the chat. But I love DS9. It's my absolute favourite Star Trek. I've rewatched all of it during the pandemic and then afterwards, and I thought, okay, I'll start Voyager and redo Voyager as well, and I sort of stalled out. Even though I was really enjoying it, there was way more enjoyable stuff in early Voyager than I remembered. So I was essentially, it was quite a pleasant surprise, but then I stopped around the end of season 2, and sort of it took me a long time to decide to start season 3. And I have relatively recently, and I've been loving it. the things that used to annoy me about it, like Neelix, for instance, not nearly as annoying anymore. I don't know if that's just nostalgia talking. Once again, nostalgia rules my life. But yeah, I think it's been fun. Nick, you've got the original series is the only one that's available at present. I imagine they've been selling down stock because the second edition of the actual Star Trek Adventures game is coming out soon. So my suspicion is they're probably not reprinting anything. I don't know if they're going to do a second edition of Captain's Log, or if it would just be the same Captain's Log edition, or maybe just everybody bought out all of the DS9 ones and all that. Jez, yes, Voyager is Janeway, and Nick, it is also Tuvix. Yeah, everyone remembers Tuvix. It was painful memories. I'm not surprised. Right, I must continue. Otherwise, I'm gonna keep you all night if I don't get through these other games. So, what we've got next is Ulfenkhan. So this is not indie, really, because this. Well, I mean, it depends what you define as indie games publishers, but this is from Cubicle 7, who have the various licenses from Games Workshop. This is for Soulbound. So, as I'm sure everyone knows, I'm a huge fan of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Soulbound was the system that they created to do Age of Sigmar role-playing. So I've played a bit of Soulbound. It is good fun. I like it. And it tackles the Age of Sigmar world in a really interesting way, I think. It's a very heroic fantasy, much like Age of Sigmar is just generally. Everybody's walking around with incredible powers. Everybody feels like a superhero. It's Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, but the next level up. Super, you just feel like you are, if you're a Stormcast Eternal, you feel like you're a god walking around in armor, which is exactly what it should do. It's a different system. It's designed to be different. It works really well for that. And there's also quite a nice conceit in the reason it's called Soulbound and the reason that you can play pretty much anything is because your party have been soulbound together. So you are working for Sigmar or working for the forces of order, and you've all been your souls have literally been bound together so that your successes and your failures are shared. And I think that's quite a nice idea. It's very much of this kind of high fantasy, high stakes, Mortal Realms storytelling. So it works quite well. Cursed City, obviously, the Warhammer Quest release. Lots of ups and downs with the Cursed City, I would say. Beautiful set. It looks gorgeous. The art, the miniatures, even the advertising for Cursed City was amazing. Some of the gameplay didn't quite work for me. I had a bit of trouble with it. But I really enjoyed the setting. So I've played a chunk of Cursed City, but I've not completed it. I've not finished it all the way. I kind of put it to one side and just thought, I'll come back to this. There's a handful of really nice fan-made rules changes and supplements. I thought I would come back to it and maybe play those, and then just never kind of got back to it. But I really like Cursed City as a setting. So the Cursed City itself, Ulfenkhan, it's vampire infested, very much kind of Russian sort of inspired. There's a sort of almost a, I don't know I'm not sure what era it would be, but there's very much Cossacks and that kind of thing, Tsars and whatnot. If you enjoy the old world and the Warhammer Fantasy world, it's very Kislev. And I actually really liked the idea of taking the Cursed City Warhammer Quest game and retooling it to be in Kislev. Set it in Prague, for instance. And essentially use the game and the miniatures and all of the cool art and all of that stuff to just tell some fun stories in Kislev instead. But they have released this book recently, and Cubicle 7 sent this through to me. It is a source book for Ulfenkhan, and I think it's lovely. It, just like the Cursed City game is a gorgeous looking game. Like even down to like this map. Like you see how lovely this map is. I mean, you can't really see it, but it's just really beautifully put together. There's loads of. I mean, I am a big fan, and I know I've said this on a few things, and Cubicle 7 have been really generous and sent me a few things now. But I'm very pleased that I actually really like the stuff that Cubicle 7 do, because it makes it really easy to just be positive about this, because it's so beautiful and there's so much stuff in here that really looks great and just gives you so many options for telling stories in Ulfenkhan. You've got all of the roster of characters from Cursed City, so all of the bad guys are there. A load of the good guys are about as well, if you want to include them. I believe it ties into the story from Cursed City as well. So if you want, then you can set it before or during or after the events of the Cursed City campaign. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here. One thing I thought, I don't know if anybody here read the Cursed City novel, which I was a little bit disappointed by, because it sort of started by painting this picture of the city, this oppressed city where Radakar the Wolf is in charge, and there's desperate times, and you could sort of see why the heroes of Cursed City need to get involved. And it was a really nice idea, and then the sort of story I felt kind of repeated itself quite a lot, and you didn't really learn much more about the characters, you didn't really learn much more about the villains beyond the sort of initial impressions. So this book, spending a load more time delving more deeply into those characters, I think is a really nice opportunity, I suppose, to find out more and to spend a bit more time in a great setting. I mean, I'd go so far as to say that Cursed City is probably... is it my favourite? Is it my favourite sort of location in Age of Sigmar? It might be. I mean, in part, that's because it's also one of the locations that's the most like Warhammer Fantasy, I suppose. I like Hammerhal. I think that there's some really cool stuff there. But I think Ulfenkhan is probably Pip's Hammerhal at the post, I would say. And Jez, yeah, every city in any Warhammer game is cursed. It very much so, yeah. Jake, interesting. I've never read any Age of Sigmar roleplay books, only the Cubicle 7 4th edition Wolfrup. I think what's great about it is that they have taken the same level of care and attention, and like for want of I don't want to be too sort of almost sycophantic about it, but I think the design is really nice. So if you like attractive books, I think Cubicle 7 have done some really good work in just making the books look really nice and making them functionally really strong. I'm a big, the way I work is very much about sort of headcanon and cherry picking things. So I like source books that give me lots of options and kind of say, well, here's how the official version works. But you can kind of take that toolkit and take what you want out of it, and you can put more stuff into it. And I think for Soulbound, they've done really nice work, much like they've done for Wolfrup, in making them into deep and rich locations and characters. It adds so much detail to the world. Age of Sigmar has developed in a huge way since it first came out. There's way more lore, there's way more depth to it now. But I think, much like Warhammer Fantasy owed a great deal of its world building to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay in the first edition, I think Soulbound is doing great work sort of building out the wider Age of Sigmar universe, and the Mortal Realms have way more depth as a result of Soulbound and some of the stuff that they've done. So, yeah, it's good stuff. Bio. I have that book. It's very good and well worked out. Right. Yeah. And so it definitely has that feel. It looks great. And Jez, great alternative setting for Moor time too. Yeah, I think that's a really good shout actually. If you wanted to do Age of Sigmar Moor time, you could probably do it there. And have it, a good excuse for people to be out and about fighting all the time. Nick, Curse City, a box set I have and I'm yet to actually assemble and play. Beautiful miniatures. It's a great set. Nick, grab the Death Wizard's rules. Lots of stuff in that box. Perfect for it. Oh, that's interesting, Jez. So, because Death Wizards you were mentioning is about necromancers, right? So I suppose you're saying that you could literally just grab the zombies. You've got all the bats. You've got all the wizards. There's a lot of cool stuff in that box. And then Nick, you're adding that Hobgoblin plus Curse City will work as well. Actually, if I paint my Indomitus Necrons in sandstone, I've got golems too. That's very fun. Yeah, I like that. That's a great idea. Jake, absolutely agree on how Age of Sigmar's lore has improved since the first edition. It really has, yeah. I mean, I'm currently working on my latest video, hopefully for Friday this week. It's going to be on the rest of Age of Sigmar first edition's development. So obviously the first part ended with the release of the game. We sort of talked about a lot of the difficulties in sort of creating the game. What we then see over the course of the next year or two is a radical investment, a deep investment from Games Workshop in making sure that Age of Sigmar works and trying to fix as many of those problems as possible. Some of that is the lore, some of that is the rules, some of that is points values, and some of its accessibility. A lot of steps made that really set the stage for second edition of Age of Sigmar to be way more successful. So yeah, I think it is a really interesting story, I think. And I think Age of Sigmar, love it or not, it has come a long way since those early editions. I think it's quite impressive, and it's stuff like this. It's stuff like Soulbound, being allowed to explore the world in different ways. That's how you get different creators getting involved and coming up with new stuff to add in, which is really cool. So, I'm not sure. I'm fine. I think if we come back in a month's time, say, and we do a sort of post-mortem on these things that I'm talking about now, I doubt I will have played in Ulfin Khan. I don't think I will have played Soulbound in that time, but I will read the book and be able to talk with a bit more detail about, what I think works, what I think's great, what I think's not great, if there's anything in there as well. Okay, Jez, I love how Age of Sigmar is so ludicrous yet still very Warhammer. I think, yeah, I mean, the way I often describe Age of Sigmar is it's kind of like metal album covers. So, what always comes to my mind is Bat Out of Hell and the Bat Out of Hell 2. That is a real, just absolutely absurd, over the top giant bat sat on a building, and that is what I think Age of Sigmar is. So I think when you lean into that wild sort of fun, it's great. Grim, have a great night. Thank you for joining, and yes, +1 for solo game streams. Fantastic. I'm glad. Thanks for coming along. But yeah, I think that Age of Sigmar as a setting, it struggled with some of that early stuff because it was so big and there was too much potential. And because there was so much potential, it was like there was nothing actual. I think they've found a much better balance now. And I think for me, it does work best when it is, let's just go for it. It's totally wild. It's it is gods and monsters roaming around. That's probably also while I will not, I don't love it in the same way that I love Warhammer Fantasy. But I certainly don't hate it because I think they've done some cool stuff. Okay, Nick, you're gonna get your Bad Squiddo Cappy Cannon, Capybara with a cannon into Death Wizards too. From Bad Squiddo at UK Games Expo, I bought the Capybara. I bought the Pigs statues, like the icons. So I like the idea of using them as objective markers in a game. So that's my plan. Let's get into... So the last thing I wanted to cover today is Moonstone. So we've got any folks here? Any folks here fans of Moonstone? Played Moonstone? Know about Moonstone? The sort of indie fantasy skirmish game. I'll be interested to know, if what people's experience with Moonstone is, because I've seen it around for a long time. It came out in 2018, I believe. So it looks gorgeous. Like, this is such a good-looking game. They've designed the miniatures around. There's a real sort of Brian Froud, labyrinth, dark crystal kind of feel to the miniatures. I mean, I've got some of them here. I don't think you'll be able to see them all that clearly. But so this is a goblin who is riding on a pug, just like a big pug. He's a goblin. He's got his lance. Just a real good guy. And I think that's great. And then there's duelists as well. You've got these kind of really, really nice looking humans. There's really fun goblins, which I think is really great. It's a little goblin there wearing a death mask, sort of thing. Plague doctor mask, sorry. You can see that. It's great. So I really like the look of the miniatures. And I really like the art and the feel. And the design of it is very much around... It's sort of positioned as this guy. It's a whimsical fantasy world. There's darkness to it, but everything's also like got a bit of fun, a bit of sort of comedy to it. Jez, Doug the Flatulent, being one of the characters, I think. And Jez, you got bought Moonstone for Christmas, gradually painted the minis. Really love the look and feel of it, and the system looks fun. Yeah, because there is, and Nick, you're saying, they love the Moonstone methods of using dice to set objectives, because you use D4s to represent the different Moonstones themselves. So they are scattered around, and that's what you're trying to get hold of. That's what you're fighting over, the objective markers. It's a really nice looking game world, I think. And it is pretty costly as a sort of buy-in cost. It's not cheap. I actually already had the 2-player starter set, because I decided, okay, this is something I'm going to explore. I thought maybe I'd do some content about it at some point. I more recently talked with Goblin King Games about doing some Moonstone specific content. So I've got some interviews that are coming up with Tom Greenway, who created and designed the rules, with VG Thorne, who wrote the background and is writing the sort of ongoing background. So I'm going to be doing a sort of an overview video, I think, next month on Moonstone, and sort of exploring a little bit more about it, how it works, things I like about it, what's great about it. But they also gave me some of the books and a couple of copies of the game. So I'm going to be giving those away next month as well. There's going to be one just on the channel, so just a giveaway to anybody who watches the channel, the YouTube channel. There's also going to be a second giveaway just for patrons. So there's 2 chances to win Moonstone next month. Hopefully people are interested in that. I'll share more details about that as we get there, because that's, if you don't know, on the Patreon until the end of the year at the least, I'm going to be doing giveaways, free giveaways to patron supporters every single month. At the moment, it's a copy of Warhammer Quest Lost Relics. So this copy right here, sealed copy of Lost Relics, Warhammer Quest. I don't know if you ever played that. This is the solo Warhammer Quest game that was released. So that's currently what my patrons can win. All they've got to do is answer a very simple question. Nice and easy. And then next month, it's going to be Moonstone. just watching on the channel, you're going to be able to win Moonstone as well. And then there's lots of other fun stuff as well. There's some Cursed City stuff coming up. There's some Games Workshop event minis, anniversary minis, I think. So lots of fun stuff. But whilst we're on Moonstone, I like the look of it. I think there is a really interesting mechanism for combat resolution. So I want to play that and see how that works. You have cards that you can use as well in combat. One thing that I think is really fun, and this is something I don't think we see enough of in miniatures games. In the starter set, there is a character called Eric the Squire. So he's just a young lad, a young squire. And he's got his wooden sword. He's a squire for one of the knights. That's the character in the starter set. They did a sort of what you would, in Games Workshop terms, call a global campaign, where you were able to decide, as players, you were able to decide the fate of Eric the Squire. Is he going to continue being a squire? Is he going to align himself with the Dominion? Is he going to align himself with the Goblinoids? I forget what they're called. The Commonwealth, I think. And then there's a third faction as well. And they could actually play and work out who this guy's going to align himself with. And then they released a new model of a sort of powered up version of Eric. And I thought that was really cool. So the narrative it's something I love, and something I'm exploring in the Storm of Chaos research that I'm doing. We saw that with Volton. So this idea that you introduce a character at a sort of lower level, and then over the course of storytelling, over the course of interactive events, you can actually then progress that character. They can develop and change, and then you get a new miniature to represent them. You do see it here and there. It's not unheard of. It just seems to be something that I think I've seen it happen more in card games than I've seen it happen in miniatures games, and I'm curious why that is. Why we don't see it as often as one might expect. I might put some feelers out actually and ask people online if they can remember, if they've got more examples alongside Volton, alongside Eric the Squire, more examples of miniature game characters who evolved and changed in the story, and that was reflected in their miniatures and the sort of subsequent releases. I know there'll be plenty. And I think the End Times probably's got some examples of it, but yeah, I feel like there must be some, right? There must be some. Legend of the Five Rings used to do it all the time with its characters. Obviously, the cards would evolve, and you would get new versions of characters as they sort of changed over the course of different expansions and over the course of the storytelling. I thought it was really fun. It's something I love to see. So you were reflecting those changes that were happening in the wider meta, the wider story, actually at the table. I think that's great. Samuel, you're saying Moonstone looks amazing. Unfortunately, I'm apparently allergic to actually playing a game, but I'll be picking up some minis. Yeah, I mean, welcome to my world, I think. So I'm also allergic to actually getting stuff to the table, let alone getting it painted. But yeah, I think it is a fantastic looking game with some nice, relatively simple rules that look quite nice and do have and as you say, Nick, there's a bluffing and a risk-taking element to it as well, which I think is cool. So that, coupled with the Fraudian sort of design, that it's all very appealing. It's all a very appealing sort of package. So yeah, very much hoping that it lives up to the kind of expectation. I mean, I saw at the UK Games Expo, the gaming tables that they had set up for Moonstone were absolutely stunning. Some of the nicest layouts, some of the nicest tables at the UK Games Expo, I think. Just really beautifully staged. Fantastic stuff. And I think that speaks to the world and the sort of, the attitude of it, which is great. Steve, you're saying battle cars. Anyone? Is the suggestion that battle cars is the solo game of choice? Or is that just a general call to arms for battle cars? I wonder. I think so. That is the sort of final game. So I've not really gone into too much detail. I've kind of touched on a few games that people have sent me that I really like the look of. As I say, what I would love to do next, I'm going to kind of try and force myself to do, is try. Well, I will before I do. I will schedule a return to these games stream in probably a month, maybe a little bit longer. I'll keep everybody updated on it. And the idea will be that I'll come back to each of these 4 games. So we'll talk about Bloodsport Gambler, Moonstone, Soulbound, Ulfam Khan, and Hobgoblin. But we'll come back to them on the basis that I will have read them and hopefully played them as well. And sort of spent more time with them. So I think that is my pitch, that is my promise, my pledge. So I will do that, and we'll talk about in more detail, because I don't think I'll have time to sort of do full review videos for these games, but I would like to spend some more time talking about them with more specificity and detail. So if people have enjoyed this, very rambly, very like complete nonsense of me just chatting, but hopefully it was interesting enough. We'll get back together and we'll talk about these games in a month or so. That's my plan. Nick, yeah, you've mentioned Solo September. I think that's a great idea. I think we've put together some plans. Let's get in the Discord and chat about Solo September. I think that's a really fun idea. Let's try and align it to Fighting Fantasy Fest in September. At the moment, I'm 50-50 on whether I'll be able to make Fighting Fantasy Fest, but I would love to. So I'm hoping I do make it to that. And I think that I also believe Steve Jackson's Fist is launching then as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of fun solo content in September. So I agree. Let's try and do something around that. I think that's a really good shout. And then there's also mention of Dragon Meet. So I am hoping to go to Dragon Meet as well. I'm also hoping, it's not guaranteed, I probably shouldn't mention anything at all, but I'm hoping to do some kind of panel or just, some sort of interactive element as well at Dragon Meet if I'm invited to do it and I've not offended anybody by that time. So, by giving away secrets, essentially. But yeah, that's my hope, is that I'll be at Dragon Meet and I'll be able to do some stuff, and I'll be at Fighting Fantasy Fest and I'll hopefully be able to do some stuff. We'll do Solo September. The next live stream coming up in a fortnight is going to be a solo game. So I'm going to put out on the community tab on YouTube a poll for a couple of the games we've talked about today, a couple of other games as well. We'll see what games people think are the fun ones to talk about, and then that's the one that I'm going to play in a fortnight. But I really appreciate everybody joining and hanging out. I think this has been fun. It's been a good excuse for me to sit down and think about some of these games and chat about them. William, greetings from China. Hello. Sausage or bacon butty, and which condiment? Now, you see, I'm probably surprised people with this, but I actually don't eat meat. So if I was going to have anything, it would be a vegetarian sausage sandwich, I think. And I would have to go with red sauce, tomato ketchup, which I'm sure is very basic of me. But I think that's probably what I would go for out of those options. But yeah, thank you for the question, William. Okay. Well, let's wrap it up there, folks. But once again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been really fun to chat. Some good excuse to just hang out and talk about some random cool looking indie games and some other random stuff as well. I think that's been really fun. So yeah, thanks again, guys. And I will see you for the next one. So I will see you next time, guys. Thanks so much.